This is the lecture on non-communicable disease programs, an introduction, and a bit of focus on chronic lung disease and cancer. So at the end of this session, you should be able to grasp the definition of what non-communicable diseases are in the context of the Philippines. You should know the various existing government programs created to address these diseases, particularly for in the context of this lecture. So that would be cancer and chronic lung diseases. Understand the public health concerns of cancer and lung disease, non-communicable diseases, and have a basic understanding of the mechanisms these diseases develop from a health systems level. Okay. So these are the top 20 causes of mortality in 2024. You will notice, so I'm going to use my pen tool here and the laser pointer. So the laser pointer, you will notice that ischemic heart diseases, neoplasms, cerebrovascular diseases, pneumonia, diabetes mellitus, hypertensive diseases, uh, chronic lower respiratory diseases, respiratory tuberculosis, other heart diseases, and remainder of the diseases of the genitourinary system uh, con- constitute the top 10 mortalities in the Philippines. Now, I'm going to ask you probably in the Q&A what is what is wrong with this kind of graph, okay? But right from the start, I can tell you, number one, the neoplasms doesn't allow for nuance, okay? Because one, when you say neoplasms, you mean both the benign and the malignant tumors, okay? And some benign tumors can actually be deadly, particularly when they are space-occupying lesions in places like the central nervous system, okay? Second, some neoplasms are indolent, such as prostate cancer, and neoplasms have different pathogeneses and pathophysiologies, okay? So these malignancies, some of these cancers are, well, a lot of cancers of different organ systems, or even in the same organs, have different etiologies, different pathogeneses, and different pathophysiologies. So you are comparing apples and oranges and lumping them together. One does not equate the development of breast cancer with the development of colon cancer. Second, where is COVID-19? Do we really believe that it is no longer a leading cause of death? Okay, so I guess one of the things that we can take away from this slide and from this graph is that don't take graphs like these, okay? Make sure that there is that all of your data is optimized and it is clear, and also there should be room for differentiating the different diseases. Like for example, when you say chronic lower respiratory diseases, do you mean asthma or do you mean COPD? Or are you talking about other kinds of chronic lower respiratory diseases that are seen in autoimmune disease or um, uh, other congenital diseases where a person lacks the ability to produce surfactant? Okay, so that's the problem with this particular graph. Okay, a light question before we go into the heavy parts. So why do we no longer call them lifestyle-related diseases? Uh, the main reason is because there are connotations. There's an implication of poor judgment or poor choices that these diseases are a product of moral failure instead of a health problem. And when we call them lifestyle related diseases, we ignore that a lot of these have components that are outside of the control of the patient, the social determinants of health that are outside of the control of the patient, such as education. For example, they don't feel unwell, so they don't consult early, nor do they take maintenance medications for, say, hypertension. Second, in the realm of genetics, diabetes, and for those of you who graduated with a molecular biology and biotechnology degree, the realities of epigenetics. The reason why diabetes mellitus, type 2 diabetes mellitus is so prevalent in the Philippines is because we once were subject to famine. Okay? And that famine has effects that are felt not just in the generation that experienced it, but up to 4 or 5 generations down the line. Okay? Obesity itself has a genetic component, and even ischemic heart disease and other uncontrollable. There are other uncontrollable factors. Okay, and we'll talk about the factors later. So when we talk about non-communicable disease prevention, we have to talk about necessary versus sufficient causes. Okay, and in communicable disease prevention, the necessary cause is clearly defined. Okay, so for example, for malaria to occur, there has to be a pathogen, which is whether that is Plasmodium ovale, Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium vivax, or Plasmodium malariae. You need to have that pathogen for malaria to occur. And your sufficient cause is the pathogen plus a mosquito bite from a female Anopheles mosquito. Okay, so let's have this example on our left. You will notice here you have 3 different sufficient causes. Okay, so for a fall to occur in the elderly, it's sufficient cause 1. You have your tremor, your joint deformity, your visual impairment, your muscle weakness, and your arthritis. Whereas in your sufficient cause 2, you have joint deformity, hearing loss, tremor, balance disorders, and cardiac arrhythmias. And for your sufficient cause 3, you need to have tremor, Charcot foot, peripheral neuropathy, hearing loss, and visual impairment. So when you look at all 3 sufficient causes, that means all of these factors combined lead to a fall in the elderly. What is the necessary cause? And the clear answer is that the necessary cause is the tremor. Okay? So you see that in this Rothman's pie, and in the second one and in the third one, tremor is the common factor, okay, that you need. So in non-communicable diseases, the necessary cause is not as clearly defined for many of the diseases, or there are many necessary causes and multiple sufficient causes. For example, with lung cancer, you have your cigarette smoking versus your occupational inhaled hazards. So for example, if you have a workplace that doesn't limit your exposure to potentially carcinogenic inhaled substances, or you live in a city where basically they don't care about air pollution or air pollution control, you will develop lung cancer. Okay, and there are morphologies, or there are subtypes of lung cancer that do not need inhaled do not have the necessary cause of an inhaled lung irritant. Okay, and it starts because of genetics. Okay, you got the bad luck with genetics. Okay, uh, with COPD, it's also the same thing. You have your cigarette smoking, you have your occupational inhaled hazards versus your air pollution, and also genetics plays a part with COPD. Okay, people who have family members with COPD are more likely to develop COPD themselves. So with non-communicable diseases, it is important to look at your risk factors. Okay, Instead of examining causes, which is a black and white paradigm operating with the assumption that NCDs can be completely prevented, look for risk factors. You cannot have zero prevalence of an NCD. Okay, you can have that with communicable diseases because the necessary cause is clearly defined. Okay, not so with NCDs. And you have to determine if the risk factors are controllable or non-controllable, which leads us to the next exercise. So, if nobody is going to be asking questions in the Q&A, I will be asking questions directed at the audience, okay? Because we are going to separate all of these risk factors for the development of colon cancer according to the, well, not just the American Cancer Society, but also the Centers for Disease Control, okay? I simplified some of the risk factors, but it's pretty much there in the respective websites, okay? So you have your excess body weight, your type 2 diabetes mellitus, age, family history, ethnic background, low fiber, high fat diet. So for those who think that high protein diets are the solution to your health woes, think again. Alcohol consumption, tobacco use, and your lack of exercise. Okay? So we will be bringing this to the Q&A. So when it comes to our approach to NCDs, unlike with communicable diseases where it's you can get away with slogans like control the vector, control the disease, protect everyone with a vaccine or vaccines prevent the disease, or basically um, prevent the spread of the pathogen. With NCDs, the approach is to modify what is controllable, the risk factors that are controllable, address social determinants of health that contribute to the risk factors that are uncontrollable, okay, and monitor old and new trends and other determinants of non-communicable diseases. So, for example, for your generation, there is actually a lower number of people who use traditional tobacco products, such as cigars, cigarettes, and even chewed tobacco. But in your generation, there are more people who use electronic cigarettes, or also known as vapes. Okay, and we have to monitor whether the rise will also coincide with higher numbers of people developing COPD later in life or lung cancer later in life, or maybe even earlier. Okay, so consider your modifiable behavioral risk factors. For example, for um, ischemic heart disease or for heart attacks, your tobacco use, physical inactivity, unhealthy diet, harmful use of alcohol, while your metabolic risk factors include raised blood pressure, overweight or obesity, hyperglycemia, and hyperlipidemia. Okay? So when we talk about the approach to NCDs, please keep in mind when we go through the slides concerning the Department of Health, let's ask ourselves, is the Department of Health doing all those three things in the approach to non-communicable diseases? Okay? And then let's have another round of questions. Uh, Sorry, not questions, but let's have another question that stretches our critical thinking. Okay, what is the difference between policy and regulation? Okay, so I'm not gonna answer that because this is how you have to find the answer for yourself. Instead, I will use the analogy of role-playing games. Okay, so your tabletop role-playing games. So with regards to your tabletop role-playing games, you have your game rules. Okay, so this is what you can or cannot do during a session. Okay, you have to take the game master or the dungeon master's word as law. Okay, so when he says that this is what is happening, that is what is happening, and then the success of your actions depend on the roll of the dice. Okay, so you have to accept what the dice rolls or what the dice gods give you. Whereas the analogy for policy is how you play the game. Are you a min-max player? Do you play to your strengths and then you put everything else, the things that you don't think are important, into your dump stats? Okay, or do you want to play in a full role-playing immersion, like you play for the sake of the story, or even worse, somebody who has um, played a played the part of the game master or the dungeon master, do you like going off the rails? Like there is a carefully set plot by the dungeon master, but you'd rather explore other parts that the dungeon master obviously didn't prepare for. Okay, so you can be an annoying character, or you can be hyper efficient in making sure that your character is made for combat. Uh, that is basically your approach or your policy. Okay, whereas you cannot compromise certain things inside the box that are the game rules. Okay. Now that we have discussed, or I have given my analogy of what is health regulation and what is health policy, let's ask what are or how is health policy formed or shaped? Okay, so usually I give this lecture live. So I am instead going to ask this in the Q&A if nobody asks questions. Okay, how is health policy formed or shaped? And what are your usual, and I will expect certain answers. Okay. So meanwhile, there are personalities and there are people who help influence health policy. And chief among them, of course, is our chief executive, the head of state and the head of government in the Philippines. Okay, so what they think is the biggest problem with health, they give to the Secretary of Health, or they assign or delegate to the Secretary of Health. And then you have other health policy influencers, thanks to their privileged speech. So members of the legislature. And then you have your judiciary, whose rulings, okay, so judicial rulings, Supreme Court rulings, sometimes help shape health policy, okay? Because they are a form of regulation, how the DOH um, can or cannot act, and then the DOH has to set its health policy based on these rulings. And then you have your advocacy groups, whether these are your social political organizations, your religious organizations, such as the Roman Catholic Church, which back in 2012 was vehemently opposed to the reproductive health bill back then. You have your businessmen or capitalists who stand to either profit or lose when certain health policies are pushed. Okay, who gets to profit, for example, when a majority of the population is obese, okay? And who gets to profit when the majority of the population eats healthily, um, has strict caloric control, okay, and know what is right for their own personal dietary needs. Then another health policy influencer or shaper is the United Nations and the World Health Organization. And then you have your health scientists and researchers. In an ideal situation, international consensus and health scientists and researchers would be the primary voices in health policy. Okay? So, but we don't live in an ideal world, and that's the reason why you have all of these fitfluencers who are not scientists, who are not actual licensed licensed health professionals having a say, for example, in the US, on vaccine safety and being able to use vaccines as an actual public health public health tool, okay, to control communicable diseases. So this is the exchange with regards to health policy and health regulation. You have your health community, international community being shaped by your scientists, being influenced or lobbied by interest groups and advocates who are also influenced by popular opinion. Popular opinion helps shape laws and regulations, and the international community hopefully shapes policy itself. So before a law can be enforced, it needs to have a set of implementing rules and regulations, or what is called an IRR, that a bunch of technical experts call a technical working group, or a bunch of technical experts called a technical working group will then compose. Okay, we will be talking about this because later on, when we talk about the specific programs, the implementing rules and regulations, these are a background to the Republic Acts that shape the laws concerning these non-communicable diseases. When we talk about non-communicable diseases, it's important to keep in mind the Health Reform Control Knobs by Roberts and others in 2003. And the health reform knobs that we usually talk about are the five common health control knobs that we use for non-communicable diseases are financing, organization, payment, behavior, and regulation. Although in this case, with regards to health reform and non-communicable diseases, the focus has mostly been on behavior, particularly on individual behavior. We tend to focus on people should be exercising, people should be eating healthily, but we don't ask if are we giving them a chance to be able to be physically active? Do we give them enough time in this capitalist hellhole where we don't even have enough time to rest? Okay? Uh, do we also talk about regulations, but are these regulations made to protect the public or are they made to protect business interests? Okay? So there, when it comes to health reforms, consider the which knobs are being turned, and are they effective in helping control your non-communicable diseases? Okay. And this leads us to the Department of Health, which is the overall technical authority on health in the Philippines. It is a policymaker and a regulatory institution at the same time. And its three roles, according to its website, is health leadership. It is an enabler and capacity builder for health professionals, as well as the whole of the health sector, and an administrator for health services. So its vision is Filipinos being the healthiest people in Southeast Asia by 2022 and Asia by 2040. So 2022. This is according to their website. Okay? And to lead the country in the development of a productive, resilient, equitable, and people-centered health system for universal healthcare. So the mandate is to develop national plans, technical standards, and guidelines on health. Okay, so it seems like the words are there with regards to the approach to the non-communicable diseases. Okay, so let's look at the current structure of the DOH. So the current structure of the DOH, according to the website as of October 18, 2025, is that the Disease Prevention and Control Bureau, which is in charge of our non-communicable disease programs, is under the Public Health Services cluster. However, the problem with this is that it references officials no longer affiliated with the agency, such as Undersecretary Vergere, or actually Undersecretary Singh, and Undersecretary Ronquillo. Okay? And the most important bureau, of course, is highlighted, DPCB, Disease Prevention and Control Bureau. And just a personal note here, the late Tony Bourdain, who is my favorite food author, okay, had an opinion once that a restaurant's cleanliness is as good as its bathroom for its patrons. Okay, so if the bathroom of a restaurant is dirty, you can bet that that kitchen is just as dirty as that bathroom. Okay, so it's probably wise not to eat there. Okay. I have a corollary to that belief, and it is this. An agency's competence is only as good as its maintenance of its website. Because we will be looking at the DOH's programs and its approach to non-communicable diseases, and there are things that are going to make you and I facepalm. But first, let's talk about a paradigm shift from non-communicable diseases clustering to the life course approach according to the World Health Organization. A life course approach to health aims to ensure people's well-being at all ages by addressing people's needs, ensuring access to health services, and safeguarding the human right to health throughout their lifetime. So in the context of universal healthcare, member countries who adhere to policy interventions and recommendations by the World Health Organization are more likely to receive aid and technical support. And there is less distinction between non-communicable and communicable diseases. That's why the website of the DOH, when it talks about programs, it goes through a life course, so children, young adults, and the elderly, and then general grouping of programs. Okay. I also have to point out that non-communicable diseases is a compromised terminology because, like I said before, some cancers from infectious diseases are communicable. For example, your cervical cancer. Okay, a necessary cause is the human papilloma virus. And now we go to the DOH website. And when we go to the DOH website, oops, it's still called lifestyle-related diseases. Facepalm. But at least they're trying because their description says that non-communicable diseases include cardiovascular conditions, diabetes mellitus, lung or chronic respiratory diseases, and a range of cancers which are the top causes of deaths globally and locally. And their vision is of a Philippines free from the avoidable burden of non-communicable diseases. their mission is to um, ensure sustainable health, promoting environments and accessible, cost-effective, comprehensive, equitable, and quality healthcare services for the prevention and control of NCDs, and guided by the principle of health in all, health by all, health for all. Okay, so there's your mission. That's a mouthful. I am not going to read it. Okay. And these are the objectives. Note that some of these objectives, in relation to what I said earlier when we approach our NCDs, control the risk factors that are controllable. So you have your number 3 over here. Okay. Reduce modifiable risk factors. Okay. And underlying social determinants of health. Uh, Monitor trends and determinants. So you have one of them. And strengthen health systems and increase access to quality medicines. Okay. Strengthen leadership, governance, and multi-sectoral action. So hopefully, there should be more emphasis on prevention rather than just treatment approaches. And the program components for the lifestyle-related disease program are your cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, cancer, and chronic respiratory disease. And these are the relevant policies. As of now, these are not uh, that relevant, especially in your year level. Just know that AO means administrative order, and it applies to everyone, not just people or institutions or entities within the Department of Health. Okay, so it covers everyone in the Philippines. And the most important, of course, is AO number 2011-0003, or the National Policy on Strengthening the Prevention and Control of Chronic Lifestyle-Related Non-Communicable Diseases. They're trying, okay? It's still lifestyle-related, but it's also non-communicable diseases. And then you have your smoking cessation program. It recognizes that tobacco, especially the inhaled form, is a risk factor for 3 major non-communicable diseases. So you have your cardiovascular disease, your cancers, okay, your lung cancers, and even colon cancer has tobacco use as one of its risk factors. Chronic respiratory disorders such as COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and your bronchial asthma, okay, or bronchial asthma exacerbation. Interestingly enough, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration considers smoking also a risk factor for type 2 diabetes mellitus. And the important laws and regulations with regards to the smoking cessation program includes RA 10351, also known as the Sin Tax Law, and RA 10643, which provide graphic health warnings, and Executive Order 26 that makes a smoke-free environment and basically bans public smoking uh, in enclosed spaces. Okay. So this is the vision and mission of the smoking cessation program. The vision is a tobacco-free Philippines, healthier people, communities, and environment. This vision is we view with suspicion, considering that um, one of the main opponents of the Sin Tax Law back in 2013, uh, or the Sin Tax Bill back in 2013, uh, two of the main opponents is now the Secretary of Finance, and the other was a senator who comes from Ilocos Norte, which is known for producing tobacco. Okay? And that senator um, had a lot of dealings with the monopoly that produces tobacco in the Philippines. Okay, a lot of the manufactured tobacco in the Philippines is owned by the Philip Morris and Fortune Tobacco Company, PMFTC, which is under, I'm going to pause here for dramatic effect. So I paused for dramatic effect because I also had to make sure that my notes are correct, okay? Because this is going to be very, very ironic. Philip Morris Fortune Tobacco Company Corporation is a joint venture between Philip Morris International and the local LT Group Incorporated. And LT Group Incorporated is a publicly listed holding company headquartered in BGC, founded in 1937 by Chinese-Filipino business tycoon Lucio Tan. Okay? Majority owned by Tangent Holdings Corporation. And guess what? Guess who is the CEO and chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of the East Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Medical Center? So yes, this vision of a tobacco-free Philippines, healthier people, communities, and environment, and the mission is guarantee the design and implementation of an integrated, comprehensive, and whole system of government society response. Okay. So the goal of the smoking cessation program of the DOH is to reduce morbidity rates and premature mortality rates due to four major chronic diseases. So cardiovascular, diabetes, cancer, and COPD attributable to tobacco use, with the specific objectives of reducing the prevalence of tobacco use among youths and adults, and increasing the protection level of the public from secondhand tobacco smoke. It is actually, let's face it, it's actually working because the fact that there are no more public spaces for smoking, or that smoking itself is no longer allowed in public, actually did quite the controls on our tobacco usage, or your typical or your traditional usage of tobacco. And credit where credit is due, this was done in the previous administration. But let's also remember that Nazi Germany was the first to introduce public health measures against smoking, to control smoking and to control tobacco use in its citizens back in 1933 to 1945. Okay, so just because one thing good happened doesn't excuse the other bad things that happened. And then you have your National Integrated Cancer Control Program. You have your Cancer Control Division of the DPCB, okay? And this is actually one of the few programs of the DOH with an actual legal mandate. You have a Republic Act for this, which is RA 11215, the National Integrated Cancer Control Act, with implementing rules and regulations. So it's multi-sectoral. So it's not just a DOH administrative order that is the IRR. It has to have input from other sectors and other agencies. And it is also framed with the following laws. You have your Universal Healthcare Act, your Malasakit Centers Act, and your Magna Carta for Disabled Persons. Okay? The National Integrated Cancer Control Program is the framework for all cancer-related government activities, including decreasing the incidence of preventable cancers, prevent and manage the recurrence, and provide access to quality healthcare for treatment. The mission of your National Integrated Control Program, Cancer Control Program, is to reduce the impact of cancer and improve the well-being of Filipino people with cancer and their families. Okay? And its vision is a comprehensive cancer care and optimized cancer survival in 2025. 2025. It is already 2025. Okay? So it goes to show how short-sighted the vision is. And note also that they basically accepted or they basically realized that you can't fully control cancers. There are risk factors that are uncontrollable that can lead to the development of the various diseases that are lumped under the category of cancer. So these are the objectives of the National Integrated Cancer Control Program according to the DOH website. Okay. It is to reduce premature mortality from cancer by 25% in 2025. So once again, repeating what Tony Bourdain's opinion about a restaurant's cleanliness in the kitchen in relation to the bathroom that its patrons uh, go to, okay? And an agency's competence vis-a-vis its maintenance of its website. Okay? So, anong year na? And then, ensure relative reduction of the following risk factors for cancer: 10% harmful use of alcohol, 10% physical inactivity, and 30% tobacco use. Okay? And to guarantee the availability of the following services for the selected population. So, selected cancer screening, human papilloma virus, and hepatitis B vaccination. So, like I said earlier, some cancers, because again, different pathogenesis and different pathophysiologies, actually uh, are a product of communicable diseases, of infectious diseases, such as cervical cancer and hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay? Access to palliative care and drug therapy and counseling. And this is the penultimate slide. Okay? So that is the lecture on an introduction and approach to non-communicable diseases and a basic understanding or grasp of your chronic lung diseases and that are brought on by your certain certain lifestyle choices, okay, and your cancers, okay. I will see you all at the Q&A. Thank you.